A third of America's biggest cities just watched home prices fall, and Florida is the epicenter. Picture this. You buy your dream home on a sunny Florida canal in 2022. You pop the champagne, you feel like a genius. Then while you sleep, more than $50,000 in equity quietly vanishes. No hurricane took it, no fire, just the market. Here's the stat that should terrify every Florida homeowner. In a recent poll, half of all Floridians said they're thinking about leaving the state. Half. In one town on this list, the median home price crashed almost 9% in a single year. In another, sellers lost a third of their profit. Gone. Today, using hard data from Realtor.com, ATTOM, and Zillow, we're counting down the 10 Florida towns where homeowners are losing the most money right now. From bad to absolutely brutal. Number 10. Sebastian. We kick off our countdown on Florida's Treasure Coast in a quiet little town called Sebastian. If you've never heard of it, that's kind of the point. This is a sleepy coastal community built for retirees, snowbirds, and people chasing a slower, sunnier life. And right now, that dream is getting cheaper by the month. According to data from the real estate analytics firm Cotality, Sebastian rounded out the list of the coolest housing markets in the entire country, with home prices falling 4.6% year over year. Now, I know what you're thinking. 4.6% doesn't sound so scary. But here's the thing. Sebastian is the canary in the coal mine. It's not a dramatic crash. It's a slow, steady slide. And a slow slide is exactly how equity disappears without anyone noticing until it's too late. So why is it happening here? The answer reveals a pattern you're going to see over and over in this video. Sebastian is a town powered almost entirely by retirees and second home buyers. There's very little local industry, few high-paying jobs, and not much bringing fresh, working-age residents into the area. Tourism keeps the lights on, but tourism doesn't fill houses with permanent buyers. When you have a town where almost nobody needs to move in for work, demand becomes fragile. The moment mortgage rates climb or insurance premiums spike, those discretionary buyers simply walk away. They don't have to buy. And when buyers vanish, sellers are left slashing prices to attract the few that remain. Here's your first practical takeaway. If you own a home in a retirement-driven town like Sebastian, understand that your buyer pool is far thinner than it looks. The homes that sit unsold are the ones that bleed value the fastest. Price your property realistically from day one, because in a market like this, chasing the price down almost always costs you more than pricing it right the first time. Number 9, Sebring. Now let's head inland, away from the coast, to a town famous for one thing: racing. Welcome to Sebring, home of the legendary racetrack, and unfortunately, home to some seriously skidding home values. Here in Sebring, prices fell 5.2% year over year, edging out our last stop. And this town teaches us something incredibly important, something a lot of people get completely wrong about the Florida market. Most folks assume this whole story is about the coast, about hurricanes, flood zones, and beachfront insurance nightmares. But Sebring is inland. It's not sitting on the water. It's not the first place a storm hits. And yet, its prices are falling faster than many coastal towns. Why does that matter? Because it proves this isn't only a hurricane problem. This is an affordability problem. And affordability is breaking down all across Florida, coast or no coast. Think about what's happening to the average family here. Wages in a town like Sebring are relatively flat. People aren't suddenly earning dramatically more. But at the same time, the cost of owning a home is climbing on every front. Insurance premiums are soaring, property taxes keep creeping up, and HOA fees are rising too. So even though the house itself is inland and safer, the total cost of living in it keeps ballooning. Eventually, something has to give. And what gives is the price. Buyers simply run out of room in their budgets. They do the math, realize they can't afford the monthly reality, and they either walk away or offer far less. Sellers, desperate to close, drop their asking prices, and down go the values. The lesson from Sebring is this: don't assume you're safe just because you're not on the beach. In today's Florida, the squeeze is coming from carrying costs, not just storm risk. If you're a buyer eyeing an affordable inland town, always add up the full monthly picture before you fall in love. Number 8, Ocala. Next up, we ride into horse country. Welcome to Ocala, the rolling green heart of north central Florida, famous for its stunning horse farms and its reputation as an affordable escape. And that reputation? It's exactly what got Ocala into trouble. Ocala landed on ATTOM's early 2026 list of metro areas where home prices are actively declining. During the pandemic boom, this town was a superstar. As prices in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando went absolutely insane, families and remote workers went hunting for somewhere cheaper, somewhere they could still afford a yard, a garage, a slice of the Florida dream. And Ocala was the answer. Buyers flooded in, prices shot up. It felt unstoppable. But here's the unique insight most people completely miss, and it's the whole reason Ocala is on this list. The very thing that made Ocala boom, its affordability, is also what made it fragile. Think about it. When your entire wave of new buyers is made up of priced-out refugees, people who came specifically because they couldn't afford anywhere else, you've built your market on the thinnest possible margin. These are buyers stretching to the very edge of their budgets. So what happens when mortgage rates jump? Or when insurance premiums climb by 18% in a single year, like they did across Florida? Or when property taxes tick up? The whole thing seizes up. Those budget-stretched buyers instantly get pushed out of the market. There's no cushion. There's no room. Demand doesn't just soften, it slams shut. And with fewer buyers able to qualify, sellers are forced to cut prices to find anyone who can still afford to close the deal. Ocala is a masterclass in a dangerous truth. Cheap markets can fall just as hard as expensive ones, sometimes harder, because their buyers have the least financial breathing room. If you're counting on an affordable town to protect your investment, remember Ocala. Affordability attracts crowds, but it doesn't guarantee stability. Number 7. Lakeland-Winter Haven. Now we roll into the I-4 corridor, that busy stretch of highway connecting two of Florida's biggest cities, Tampa and Orlando. And right in the middle sits our number 7, Lakeland-Winter Haven. This metro area made ATTOM's 2026 list of markets where prices are falling. And honestly, this one stings more than the others. Why? Because Lakeland was supposed to be the smart choice, the sensible one. Think about the pitch. You get a home that's cheaper than the coasts, but you're still within driving distance of major job centers in both Tampa and Orlando. On paper, it's the perfect middle ground, the responsible, level-headed place to plant your family. It felt like the safe bet. And that's exactly what makes the lesson here so powerful. Because in this market, being in the middle didn't save you. During the pandemic, Lakeland-Winter Haven caught fire right along with everywhere else. Builders rushed in. New subdivisions popped up across the region. Prices climbed fast as buyers, priced out of the big cities, snapped up everything in sight. But then came the double punch we keep seeing. Mortgage rates shot up and the cost of owning, insurance, taxes, fees, climbed right along with them. Suddenly, all that new construction turned into a problem. You had too many homes hitting the market at the exact moment buyers were pulling back. And when supply overwhelms demand, there's only one direction prices can go: down. Here's the takeaway, and it's a big one. Geography alone will not protect your investment. Lakeland proves that even the reasonable, affordable, well-located option can lose value when overbuilding collides with a demand shock. The safe-sounding middle ground got caught in the same squeeze as everywhere else. So if you're a buyer looking at a fast-growing quarter town, pay close attention to how much new construction is going up around you. A flood of new supply can quietly erode the value of the home you just bought. Number 6. Northport. All right, this is where things start to get serious. Welcome to number 6. Northport, part of the greater Sarasota area on Florida's southwest coast. Buckle up, because the numbers here are genuinely alarming. On the surface, Northport's year-over-year decline was 5.1%. Bad, but in line with what we've seen so far. But that number hides the real story. Here's the one that should stop you cold. The typical Northport home sold in August 2025 for about 20% less than it did just 3 years earlier. Read that again. Not 2%, not 5%. 20% of value, wiped out in roughly 3 years. If you bought near the peak, that's potentially tens of thousands of dollars, just gone. And it gets even more revealing. In the spring of 2025, Roughly one-third of every home listed for sale in Northport came with a price cut. 1 in 3 sellers was actively slashing their asking price, right out in the open, trying to lure in buyers who suddenly had all the power. When a third of a market is in please just buy it mode, you know the balance of power has completely flipped. So why did Northport get hit so hard? It's the same recipe we keep seeing, just concentrated. Explosive pandemic-era growth that pushed prices way too high, way too fast, followed by rising rates, brutal insurance costs, and buyers who simply refuse to keep overpaying. The market shot up like a rocket, and now it's correcting like one too. Here's your practical takeaway, and this one's for the buyers. In a town where a full third of sellers are already cutting prices, you are holding the leverage. Don't be shy. Target homes that have been sitting on the market, come in with an offer well below asking, and ask for concessions, closing costs, repairs, rate buydowns. In Northport right now, the buyer who's willing to negotiate hard is the buyer who wins big. Number 5, in Naples. Now for the entry that makes absolutely no sense, until it does. Number 5 is Naples. Yes, that Naples. Glamorous, palm-lined, ultra-wealthy Naples. One of the richest zip codes in all of America. A place synonymous with luxury yachts, designer boutiques, and multi-million-dollar mansions. And it's losing money. Home prices in Naples fell 6.7% year over year, a steeper drop than most of the working-class towns we've covered so far. So how on earth does one of the wealthiest communities in the country end up bleeding value? This is the most counterintuitive lesson in the entire video, and once you understand it, you'll never look at luxury real estate the same way again. The secret is, who buys homes in Naples? This isn't a town full of families who need a place to live near their jobs. Naples is dominated by second homes, vacation properties, and discretionary luxury buyers. These are people buying a want, not a need, and that distinction changes everything. Here's why. When the economy feels uncertain, when interest rates are high, when insurance costs are exploding, when the headlines feel shaky, a working family still has to buy a home because they need a roof over their heads. But a wealthy buyer shopping for a third vacation house, they don't have to do anything. They can simply wait, sit on their cash, see what happens. And when enough of those buyers decide to wait all at once, demand doesn't just soften, it can evaporate almost overnight. With fewer buyers competing, sellers are forced to keep dropping prices to tempt anyone back to the table. The takeaway is fascinating and important. Luxury markets are often more volatile than modest ones, not less. Wealth doesn't make a market crash-proof. In fact, discretionary demand can be the first thing to disappear when confidence wobbles. Expensive doesn't mean safe. Number 4, Miami. At number 4, we hit the crown jewel of Florida real estate, Miami. But Miami earns its spot on this list for one very specific, very dramatic reason. And it's a word that's striking fear into homeowners all across the state. Condos. Let's start with the metro level number. Across Miami, the median condo price slid from around $399,000 down to about $380,000, roughly a 4.8% drop. Now, that alone doesn't sound catastrophic. But here's the trap. That citywide average completely hides the real carnage happening inside specific buildings. To understand this, you have to know about Florida's condo crisis, force number 3 from our setup. After the tragic Surfside building collapse, Florida passed tough new safety laws requiring older condo buildings to fully inspect their structures and fund their repair reserves. Sounds responsible, right? It is. But the result has been a financial earthquake for owners. Aging buildings are now hitting residents with special assessments. Surprise, mandatory repair bills that can run anywhere from $25,000 to $65,000 or more per unit. Imagine owning a modest condo and suddenly getting a letter demanding tens of thousands of dollars you didn't budget for. In many older buildings, owners are now finding they can't sell at any price because no buyer wants to inherit that looming bill. The fallout is staggering. Prices are now falling in an estimated 92% of Florida condo markets. And in Miami, so many frustrated sellers have simply given up and delisted their units, pulling them off the market entirely to wait, rather than accept the brutal price the market is offering. Here's your critical takeaway, and it could save you a fortune. If you are buying any condo in Florida, before you sign a single document, demand the building's reserve study and its full assessment history. A condo that looks like a bargain but has a $60,000 assessment coming down the pipe is not a bargain. It's a financial trap dressed up as a deal. Do your homework. Number 3, Tampa-St. Petersburg. We've reached the top 3, and now we're talking about one of the biggest, most talked about markets in the entire state, Tampa-St. Petersburg. During the pandemic, this metro was an absolute superstar, one of the hottest housing markets in all of America. Everybody wanted in. Prices went vertical. And now, Tampa is paying the price for flying so high. Consider this. At one point in late 2025, Tampa posted the steepest year-over-year price drop among the 20 largest cities in the entire country. Not the top 10, the number one biggest drop nationally. And this wasn't a one-month blip. It marked Tampa's 12th straight month of annual price declines, a full year of falling values month after month after month. Just across the bay in St. Petersburg, the story is just as painful. The average home value there is down around 4.8% in a single year. For homeowners who bought at the peak, dreaming of endless appreciation, that's a serious chunk of equity slipping through their fingers. So what happened? Tampa is the ultimate example of a simple, brutal principle. The higher you fly, the harder you fall. This market didn't just do well during the boom, it exploded. Prices climbed at a pace that was never, ever sustainable. Investors piled in. Bidding wars were everywhere. And when a market climbs that fast, it builds up an enormous amount of air underneath it. Inflated prices with nothing solid holding them up. Then came the correction. Mortgage rates jumped. Insurance costs soared. Buyers hit their limit and pulled back hard. And all that built-up air? It started rushing out. That's why Tampa's decline has been so relentless. It had the furthest to fall because it climbed the highest. The takeaway is timeless. The hottest market during a boom is very often the coldest market during a correction. Explosive, unsustainable growth is not a sign of strength. It's a warning sign, and Tampa is living proof. Number 2, Punta Gorda. We're down to the final 2, and at number 2 sits a town on Florida's southwest Gulf Coast that has been absolutely hammered, Punta Gorda. And this one comes with numbers so stark they made national headlines. According to fresh data from Realtor.com, the median home price in Punta Gorda plunged 7.97% in just one single year. That's nearly $26,600 in value wiped out for the typical homeowner. But as brutal as that is, it's not even the most shocking figure. Here's the one that should make every seller in Florida sit up straight. Seller profit margins in Punta Gorda collapsed from about 88% all the way down to 58% in late 2025. Let that sink in. Sellers here are still making money, but a fraction of what they would have pocketed just a year earlier. The window of easy, enormous profits didn't slowly close. It slammed shut. So why did Punta Gorda get hit this hard? Because this town carries all 3 of our destructive forces at once, and that combination is deadly. First, the pandemic overcorrection. Prices here ballooned during the boom and are now snapping back. Second, the insurance shock. As a Gulf Coast town, Punta Gorda faces some of the steepest, fastest rising premiums in the country. And third, the big one, hurricane risk. Punta Gorda sits squarely in what locals grimly call Hurricane Alley. When you stack severe storm risk on top of overinflated prices and crushing insurance costs, you get a perfect storm for collapsing values. Buyers look at the total picture, the risk, the premiums, the uncertainty, and they either walk away or demand a massive discount. Sellers cave. Prices tumble. Here's the takeaway. When you're evaluating a coastal Florida home, you cannot just look at the sticker price. You have to weigh the storm risk and the insurance burden as part of the true cost of ownership, because those hidden forces are exactly what dragged Punta Gorda down to number 2. Number 1, Cape Coral Fort Myers. And here it is, the number 1 town where Florida homeowners are losing the most money in 2026. And honestly, it isn't even close. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Cape Coral Fort Myers. The headline number is staggering. In the first quarter of 2026, the median home sale price in the Cape Coral-Fort Myers region fell 9% year over year, down to around $341,000. That was the single biggest price decline of any major city in the entire United States. Not just Florida, the whole country. Cape Coral wears the crown nobody wants. But the price drop is only the beginning, because Cape Coral hits a devastating trifecta. First, it recorded Florida's largest annual price decline. Second, it has the third highest foreclosure rate among large metros in the nation, meaning more owners here are losing their homes entirely. And third, it carries the country's third highest insurance-to-value ratio. Now, what does that last one actually mean for your wallet? Here it is in plain English. The owner of a $350,000 home in Cape Coral has to set aside roughly $7,700 every single year just to cover insurance. That's the paradise tax. And it's precisely why so many buyers are walking away and so many owners are being forced out. But here's the twist that makes Cape Coral so fascinating and so important to truly understand. Local brokers insist that sales volume hasn't actually collapsed. Only the prices have. Buyers are still showing up. They're still purchasing. What they're no longer willing to do is overpay. As one Cape Coral agent put it bluntly, it's actually probably a really good time to buy. So this isn't a ghost town. It's a reset. The wild, overheated pandemic pricing is gone, and the market is snapping back to what real buyers will genuinely pay. For sellers clinging to 2022 dreams, it's painful. But for patient, prepared buyers, Cape Coral might just be one of the biggest opportunities in the country right now. So there you have it, the 10 Florida towns where homeowners are losing the most money in 2026, from Sebastian all the way down to hard-hit Cape Coral. But before you go, let's zoom out because the pattern here is more important than any single town. Did you notice it? Nearly every place on this list is a coastal or retirement-driven market that overheated during the pandemic and then got crushed by the same three forces: the overcorrection, the insurance shock, and the condo crisis. This isn't Florida collapsing. Economists have a calmer word for it: rebalancing. The market is simply hunting for a price that real buyers will actually pay. And here's the perspective flip most videos will never give you. For every losing seller, there's a winning buyer. Mortgage rates have eased to around 6.3%, inventory is climbing, and sellers are finally getting realistic. If you've been locked out of Florida for years, this might be your first real opening. So here's what to do with all this. If you own in one of these towns, get a current market analysis now, shop your insurance aggressively every renewal, and know your condo's assessment risk before it surprises you. If you're buying, this is your leverage moment. Target homes that have sat unsold, negotiate hard, and always calculate the full carrying cost, not just the sticker price. And if you're selling, price it right the first time, because the data is crystal clear. Overpriced homes just sit, go stale, and sell for less. If this breakdown helped you see the real story behind the headlines, do me a quick favor. Smash that like button. It truly helps this reach more people before they make a costly mistake. Subscribe for more no-nonsense market breakdowns, and tell me in the comments, which town shocked you the most? And are you buying, selling, or getting out? Quick disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. I'm not your financial advisor, and markets shift fast. Always consult a licensed real estate and financial professional before making any big money move. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.